The canoe was already damaged, the paddle already taken. They were not going to let them leave. Welcome back to the vault. I am the warden. Part 1 left 2 men on an island they could no longer trust, surrounded by willows that had moved closer in the night, with a canoe they had not yet examined. Tonight, the examination. Tonight, the second night. Tonight, the Swede's decision to offer what the willows required. I will not tell you the ending in advance. I will tell you this. What Algernon Blackwood understood in 1907, that most writers of horror have never understood since, is that the worst thing is not being harmed. The worst thing is being noticed by something that does not distinguish between noticing and consuming, by something that experiences the difference between your presence and your absence, the way the river experiences the difference between a pebble and the absence of a pebble. You were there. You disturbed the water. The water moves on. Something in this story understands that. And by the end, something on that island understands it too. The door is not yet shut. We are still inside. Begin. The morning of the second day broke bright and hot, the sun blazing in a windless sky. I woke when the Swede pulled back the tent flap, and for a few moments all of it, the figures, the patterings, the moved willows, seemed like the ordinary nightmare of an overheated imagination. Then I saw his face. He had changed. The night before, he had been calm, even skeptical. Now his eyes held something I had not seen in them in all our years of travel together. Something that was not quite fear, but was more unsettling than fear. It was certainty. He had made some calculation while I slept, and the answer had not been in our favor. He told me almost at once. The steering paddle was gone. Not misplaced, gone. And there was a tear in the bottom of the canoe, a long, clean cut, the tooth of no rock or snag in this sandy island. The canoe had been carefully, intentionally opened, not destroyed, prepared, made to appear usable until mid-river, when the water would enter, and the craft, never more than 2 inches above the surface, would fill and sink. A preparation, he said quietly, for a sacrifice. I inspected the damage myself and could not argue with his assessment. The cut was too clean, too deliberate, too perfectly placed to be accidental. And one of the paddles, I had seen 2 the night before with certainty, was simply gone. I had noted them both at midnight when I crept out to look at the willows. One paddle remained, the other had been taken so quietly, so completely, that it had left no mark in the sand where it had lain. We set about repairing the canoe with what we had: pitch, patience, and the unspoken agreement not to say aloud what we both already knew. I worked the pitch in silence. The Swede repaired the hull with the skill of long practice, not speaking for a long time. And then he began to talk, as if he needed to say certain things before he could stop himself. He spoke of what he had seen the previous evening while I slept, of funnel-shaped depressions appearing in the sand all over the island, appearing without footstep or disturbance, simply pressing down from above as if something heavy had stood upon the sand and then risen again. They were everywhere. He had counted 9 of them before he had stopped counting. They were the shape, he said, of something that had been standing upright, not human-shaped, something with a different relationship to verticality than anything we had a name for. That afternoon, as we finished the repairs, the Swede called me to the riverbank and held his hand cupped to his ear. I heard it then, the sound I had been almost hearing since we arrived. A vast, continuous humming, like an immense gong struck somewhere impossibly far above us and allowed to resonate. Not the wind. The wind had dropped. The willows were for once entirely motionless. The humming came from everywhere and nowhere, from the swamp, from the air, from the willows themselves. The Swede said, "It was the sound," he told me, "of their region. It leaked through. Here the membrane between their world and ours had worn thin, and what I was hearing was not a sound that belonged in the same category as wind or water or any sound the human ear was built for." He had heard it all day while I slept. That night, the second night, we sat by a fire that neither of us wanted to let die, and the Swede told me everything he knew. He told me that what surrounded us were not gods in any sense that word has ever been used. Not elemental spirits, not the old deities of place. He told me they were beings of a wholly different order, moving through their own reality, vast and purposeful, and utterly indifferent to ours, except that here, in this thin place beside the Danube, their world and ours happened to intersect. They were not aware of us in the way that a predator is aware of prey. They were aware of us the way a river is aware of a disturbance. We had created a ripple. The ripple needed to be resolved. They did not feel us precisely, he said. They blundered about, like men searching for a gas leak, feeling the disturbance, unable to locate its source. If we could keep our minds quiet, if we could keep our thoughts from spiraling in their direction, we might remain unfound until morning. But our thoughts, he said, made spirals in their world. We must keep them out of our minds at all costs. To name them was to reveal ourselves. To think of them clearly was to send up a signal they could follow to its source. Death, I asked, was what we faced if they found us? Worse than death, he said. Not annihilation, alteration, a radical change, a complete loss of oneself by substitution. Not your body that changes, you. The self that persists beyond the body's inconveniences. That was what they took. That was the alteration they worked. Worse by far than dying. He was the calmest man I have ever seen in mortal danger. That night, the second night, came down without mercy. The fire burned low, and neither of us moved to feed it. The darkness crept in very close to our faces. The humming continued overhead, ceaseless, patient. At the edge of where the firelight died, the willows were motionless and attentive. I confessed to the Swede that I could no longer bear it. That if the opposite shore were solid ground, I would swim for it. He replied without looking at me, "There are forces here that could kill a herd of elephants in a second, as easily as you or I could squash a fly. Our only chance is to keep perfectly still. Our insignificance perhaps may save us." He told me then about the sacrifice, not with relish, with the tone of a man presenting a theorem. A victim might distract them long enough for us to get away. He saw no chance of another victim. He looked at me steadily when he said this, and I understood that he did not mean me. I understood what he meant, and I would not let myself understand it. We managed to sleep, somehow, the exhaustion of terror eventually overwhelming the terror itself. I do not know what hour it was when I woke. The blanket was over my face. Something else besides the blanket was pressing upon me, and in that first instant of waking I knew, with absolute certainty, that the tent was surrounded. The sound of multitudinous soft pattering filled the night. The same sound I had heard the night before, but closer now, and no longer only around the tent. It was overhead, inside. The canvas walls moved inward slightly with each pulse of it, as if the tent itself were breathing with something that was not air. I called to the Swede. He did not answer. The sound of his snoring had stopped. He was gone. I ran out into the pre-dawn darkness, and the humming hit me like a physical force. Not above now, but everywhere. A swarm of great invisible presences, thickening the air itself. I ran along the bank, calling his name. The willows absorbed my voice. They were moving again, that terrible wrong motion, independent of any wind, and among them I thought I saw the suggestion of vast shapes, bronze-colored and purposeful, converging on the point of the island. I found him at the point of the island. He was standing with one foot already in the river. I pulled him back. He fought me with an animal's strength, saying things I could not quite follow, about going inside, about the way of the water and the wind, about giving what was required. I got him back to the tent and held him there until the fit passed, and it passed as suddenly as a candle blown out. The humming stopped at the same instant. The pattering stopped. The willows went still. He opened his eyes and looked up at me in the growing dawn light like a frightened child. "My life, old man," he said. "It's my life I owe you. But it's all over now anyhow. They've found a victim in our place." Then he slept. When the sun was fully up, I walked the island alone. The willows were still. The river had begun, barely but perceptibly, to fall. The humming was gone from the air. Everything was normal in the way that a room is normal after something unspeakable has just left it. The Swede woke, remembering nothing of the night. He was himself again, calm, practical, already calculating our departure. Some knowledge, I decided in that moment, is better held by one person than distributed between two. He began to walk the bank with a stick, probing the shallows and the sandy bays. I followed. He stopped. There, turning slowly in the current just beyond our reach, rolling over and over in the brown floodwater, was a large, dark shape, already moving downstream, already being taken by the river. It was the shape of a human body, turning in the water the way an otter turns, limp and terrible and utterly without weight. We watched it until it was gone. The Swede said nothing. I said nothing. There was nothing to say that was not already said by what we had both just watched the river carry away. We packed the camp in silence. The repaired canoe held. The river was kind. By mid-afternoon, we were out of the willow marshes and into open water, with a village on one bank and a church spire on the other, and the ordinary sky overhead. I have never gone back. I have no intention of going back. But I have thought about that island. Thought about it many times in the years since. In the particular way that thoughts return to you at 3 in the morning, when the wind sounds like something more than wind. I think about the sand funnels. I think about the paddle that was taken so quietly that it left no mark. I think about the shape in the water that rolled like an otter and was not an otter. And I think about what the Swede said, that they had found a victim in our place. I never asked him who had been camping upstream. The door is closed. For now, if you wish to return, and I suspect you do, subscribe to the vault. The next transmission has already been selected. You will want to be here when I unlock it. Until then, stay in the dark.